Now, it's been almost 48 hours since a major manhunt was launched to find this man, Daniel Khalif, after he escaped from Wandsworth prison. This was by clinging to the underside of a food truck.
Many questions have been raised as to how something like this could have happened. Joined now by Mark Fairhurst from the Prison Officers Association, who represent prison staff. Very good morning to you, Mr. Fairhurst. I mean, it's our first opportunity to speak to you directly. The immediate mechanics of how this prisoner escaped, strapping himself to the underside of a van, having come out of the kitchen and then straight through the gates. Can you just give us a sense of what you made of that?
Well, it's very concerning, and I know POA members at Wandsworth will be absolutely gutted that they're in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. But what we must understand at Wandsworth is it is chronically overcrowded and chronically understaffed. We are not being able to retain staff that we recruit. So I'm worried now, what sorts of staffing levels were on duty at the time? But more importantly, what sort of training had the staff received in those critical areas in the prison? We need to find out what's gone wrong here.
We were talking to a former inmate at Wandsworth on the programme yesterday, and sort of chiming with what you're saying. He was saying that he felt that many of the staff were massively inexperienced, were incredibly young, that he as an inmate was being asked to take the register to note down who was there, which inmates were there, which inmates weren't. Would that chime with what you're hearing from your members?
So I wouldn't criticise inexperienced staff. It's not their fault that they haven't got the experienced staff to mentor them and coach them during the early days of their career. There's a severe lack of support for those inexperienced staff. And what you've heard there from a former prisoner, that used to be common practice years ago, where we used to give those responsibilities to trusted prisoners that were called red bands. Not so sure it goes on that much these days, and certainly I wouldn't think it continues at Wandsworth. May have done a couple of years ago, but I doubt it very much now.
Can I ask you, Mr. Fairhurst, we had the local MP speaking to us yesterday morning, who was making talking about specific numbers that she'd heard about in terms of staffing levels in the prison. Do you know, as we stand now, I don't know if you've had contact with your members who were there on that occasion, do you know how many staff were working when this incident happened?
Well, I'll give you an example. The last time I visited Wandsworth, which should be holding no more than 979 prisoners, because that's their certification, they were holding 1,600, and they only had 69 prison officers on duty. During this escape, they should have had at least 120 prison officers on duty. They were nowhere near that number. They had less than 100. So these are really serious issues that need to be addressed. We need to look at the budget cuts that have absolutely crippled this service, and now we're getting criticised for it. This is on the government's watch. It's down to them. They withdrew over £900 million worth of funding. They haven't invested in staff, and they haven't invested in the infrastructure at Wandsworth. So this is on them.
Okay, I was listening very carefully and making notes on the numbers you were saying there. So you know this from people who were on duty that in the prison when this happened, that there were under 100 officers working on that occasion. Do you know a specific number?
The local POA committee have confirmed that they were well below the staffing levels that they would expect to have during a core day, Monday to Friday. So they were probably on weekend staffing levels during a core day. And that's because we haven't got the ability to retain staff, because let's be honest, working in a prison, you're working in the most hostile and violent workplace of anywhere in the world. You know, you're expected to do that to the ripe old age of 68. Someone joining the service today as an 18-year-old recruit has to work for 50 years on the front line before they can access their full pension. There are knock-on effects to working in that environment, especially with chronic staffing shortages and a lack of training for staff.
And are there particular issues with regard to Wandsworth Prison, perhaps the geography of it, the way that this would have happened, where the kitchen is located, where the lorry would have gone in, had to leave? Is there a particular reason why Wandsworth here is at fault?
No, it's no different to any other Category B local prison in a city. We all have the same procedures in place for searching vehicles, escorting vehicles, and making sure the roll is correct before that vehicle leaves the gate. So obviously something's gone wrong here. Has it gone wrong because the staff in charge haven't received the adequate training? has it gotten wrong? Because we civilianise a lot of areas in our prisons. In the kitchen area, that's run by civilians. It isn't run by prison officers. It used to be before we got privatised. So has that civilian member of staff in the kitchen area actually received any training? The OSGs, the operational support grades who were in charge of the gate area, are supposed to get a full 2-week training package before they go live. I don't know of any OSG who's recently being recruited who receives any training at all. They're relied on experienced staff to teach them what to do. That's unacceptable. It needs to be addressed.
Mark Fairhurst, thank you for speaking to us, the National Chair of the Prison Officers Association. And just a reminder, we'll be back with our correspondent at Wandsworth Prison for the latest on the escape at the top of the hour.